It is the Everton Byline, number 21. I am Matt Jones. Joining me as ever, Paddy Boylan from The Athletic. Paddy, how are you? This will be going out on Christmas Eve. What does a typical Christmas Eve look like in the Boylan household?
Oh, it's going to be a very quiet one. Monday, the 23rd, is my first day off of the festive season. So I think Christmas Eve, be quiet, watch films, have some nice food and drink, and take it easy. I don't think there'll be anything spectacular. When I was younger, when I was in school or uni, I'd go to the pub on Christmas Eve. But I'm doing my pub crawl on Monday instead. Getting out of the way a day earlier, so I don't know. Times are changing.
Marvellous stuff. It's always a great moment for me when you get the Santa tracker on the telly on Christmas Eve. See where he is in the world, working his way through. It's a good time. Like keeping an eye on that for our Christmas Eve. But yeah, my days of going to the pub are long gone as well. Getting lifts home and stuff after midnight. Yeah, they were great days, but they are long gone. Yeah, it is number 21. Paddy, you know what that means. We've already discounted one, number 21. Not as many options for this one because Leon Osman hogged it for 11 years, but some other big. I thought you were going to rattle some off.
No. It cut off temporarily.
Right. I was going to say, well, we've got Andre Gomez. He wore it, and then we had Mohamed Besic. We had Osman, obviously, Lee Wei Feng, Alex Nyarko, Danny Cadamartri, Mitch Ward, Craig Short, and Gary Rowett.
Gary Rowett. Wow. Gary Rowett then 93 to 95. So I was between the ages of 1 and 3 then. So it's not fresh in my memory, to be honest, if I did witness any of it. I think we should start with Leon Osman. Because yeah. I think Leon Osman, with the benefit of hindsight, was such an underrated player in those Moyes teams for Everton. So kind of technically astute. And he always said of Osman that if he had one more element to his game, whether it was a bit of extra physicality or a bit of extra speed, he'd have gone to the very top level, and that was the only thing holding him back. But I think you've got to appreciate the career for what it was. Like a regular for Everton, made a difference in good Everton teams. And also towards the end of his career, finally got capped by England on a couple of occasions. So I think it was a really good football. If that's the standard of football you're bringing through your academy, you're doing very well. So yeah, shout out to Leon Osman. I think he might be the most underrated Everton player we've come across for some time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's one of them where at the time going the match, like he sometimes felt like the weak link in that team. And like he was very maligned, wasn't he? It was a staple sort of joke, wasn't it? The fans would tell him to, F off and and whatever. But I think he was very versatile, like you said, technically fantastic, and probably chipped in with a lot more goals and a lot more big goals than people remember.
And good goals as well.
Yeah, he had a really good record against City. Obviously scored that one against Larissa. Got one in the Merseyside derby as well. So yeah, a stalwart, you could say, of the number 21 jersey.
If there is such
as well, Besic as well in there. I thought he was going to be brilliant initially, and obviously was really good for a bit, and then the injuries kind of ruined him, didn't they? Danny Cadamartri as well. But did he wear 21 in that derby? Or I feel like it might have been 29 or 35.
No, mine, the page I've got up here suggests that he wore it in 2001. 2020, 2001, so slightly later in his time at Everton. We've got to highlight Andre Gomez as well. Got to do a little bit. I think we had a request on that in advance last week, which was great because it flagged to me that he wore the number 21. It's absolutely what I needed.
So that was in his loan spell, was it? He wore that and then took 8 from that point on.
So yeah, 1920 and then 23-24. So between those years, seemingly.
All right, okay.
Although he did wear it, he did wear 8 for a while. You're right. I mean, if we talk about his whole spell in general, I just obviously the key moment for him is that tackle against Tottenham and the extent to which that basically changes everything. I mean, I always remember being at Arsenal the day he came back and seeing the reception not only from Everton fans but also Arsenal fans who knew what he'd been through. But like after the game, and we spoke to Yerry Mina through a translator in the tunnel, just asking questions about the game, but also about Gomez, and he was just so happy. Like as soon as we asked about Gomez, you could just see like quite emotional. Actually, he was talking about him coming back, and I remember the game itself. Like Gomez he came on as a sub, but he was so good when he came back onto the pitch. I was like, how have you even done this? Like, how is this possible? So just a testament to him and his powers of recovery. Didn't quite ever kind of hit the heights from there. I don't think. I think he's always quite a strange player in that. I think you've got to play him in a very specific role in the Premier League. I think he's got to be a third central midfielder. But a good player, and obviously fond memories of him as a person and as a kind of figure in Everton's history. So yeah, he was very popular, wasn't he?
Yeah, I remember vividly that Arsenal cameo because it was the day after my wedding. Yeah. I remember watching it at Mark Mosey's the next day, and we were, I was newlywed and on a high, and he came back and was strutting his stuff. And I was thinking maybe everything's going to be all right forever, but certainly from Everton's perspective, it has not been all right forever. But yeah, there's good delve back into the number 21 there. I enjoyed that.
Comprehensive look at the number 21 shirt.
Yeah, one of the most comprehensive one we've done of any so far. But yeah, it's becoming a show in itself for that. Before we move on to our topics this week, remember we are sponsored by the Bridewell. We were in there last week after the takeover, of course. I was in there again on Friday. It was really good. So if you're in town, last minute Christmas shopping, treat yourself. Head down there and have a bevy. If you're watching us on YouTube, do leave us a comment, hit like, hit subscribe. You listen to us on iTunes or anywhere else. Leave us a rating, leave us a review. We've got some very nice ones recently. Keep them coming at this time of year. It all helps. It's very appreciated. Let's get into it then, Paddy. We're doing 2 topics this week, really, and then we're going to rattle through some questions because we've had absolutely tons on X and Blue Sky. We'll start with the game yesterday. Obviously, Everton 0, Chelsea 0. I thought we played well. I thought it was a decent performance overall. Could have won it in the second half, although I think Chelsea had big chances in the first half as well, so they might be saying the same on their equivalent podcasts around the country. So one of them, I think it's quite an even game. Maybe a draw was fair.
Yeah.
But I think if I want to go into the game too much, we want to kind of have a look at the changes that have been made in the last few weeks. Now Everton have certainly managed to turn it around. That Man United game felt like a bit of a watershed moment, and since then Everton haven't conceded a goal at all, and there's been some pretty noticeable tactical changes that have kind of led to Everton getting back to being defensively capable under Dyche.
Yeah, and I think we spoke about this when we were looking at what was going wrong defensively, and it started for me with Dwight McNeil as a 10. And while he gave Everton kind of long-range shooting ability and he was able to thread a ball through to Calvert-Lewin on occasion, I think the off-the-ball structure really did suffer because Decore is just effectively a third central midfielder in there, brings such energy to the position, and I think knows the position better than Dwight, who's obviously still learning on the job. So for me, that's the one big change in the structure that's helped. I mean, quite noticeable here against Chelsea that actually it was a bit more of like a 4-1-4-1 with Garner, Idrissa Gueye sat deeper, and Decore more or less pushed in alongside Mangala, and that obviously there you sacrifice a bit of attacking intent, a bit of fluidity, a bit of support for Calvert-Lewin at times. But I actually thought I thought this was a much better performance than the Arsenal one, which was purely about digging in, and obviously Everton offered next to no threat whatsoever again at the Emirates. I think here you can point to some really big chances that they created and near moments when you like the Jack Harrison one. He's got so much time, but he needs to get it back on his stronger left foot. So in a sense, makes it a bit easier for the keeper, gives the keeper longer to react. Could pass it to the core even looking at the stills, but maybe that's a bit of hindsight. And then the other big one at the end with kind of Beto and loads of bodies on the line and Illiman and Dye trying to tap it in. I mean, that's two massive chances in the game. And obviously Chelsea had their own, but I think the balance here between shutting down a very capable Chelsea attack, which on its day is probably up there right now as the best in the league, with a bit more attacking prowess, for want of a better phrase, a bit more attacking intent. It's just a shame, isn't it? I don't think Dyche has got the balance completely right this season. Like at the start of the year, start of the campaign, he seemed to want to progress this Everton side a bit, play with a more expansive number 10 and look to go about things in a slightly different way, almost kick it on and prove that he could kick it on. But obviously the record in the first 4 or 5 games was dreadful defensively. Dude, so leaky. And I think since then, it has been a reversion to type, really. He's gone back to what he knows, and that's yielded basically the best defensive record in the league since that spell. 5 clean sheets in the last 6. But it's also then led to some more problems in attack, because there are times when Calvert-Lewin is just so isolated that he's basically not got a chance. I think he did very well against Wolves in his kind of hold of play and everything else. Bullied their defenders a little bit, but I don't think you're going to be able to bully Tosin and Axel Disasi. I just don't think you're going to be able to do that. And certainly not by yourself. So there are some positives and some negatives, but like I think in this run, the most important thing when you're playing caliber like this, the most important is to be solid defensively and then just see what you can get in attack. And that's the blueprint. That the game plan yesterday with a few tweaks for the opposition, that's the blueprint for City away. We've seen City are vulnerable. And maybe it's a game for somebody like Jesper Lindstrom with pacing behind, because we know City play that really high line. But yeah, I don't know what you think, but I think for me the big change is that Doucouré comes in and it helps Everton defensively but limits them a bit in attack.
Yeah, and I think Doucouré playing higher up just means you can get Mangala into the team as well.
Yeah.
And before this run, Doucouré was playing deeper, wasn't he, alongside Garner, and it just didn't really work at all. Like this version of Doucouré is not a sitting midfielder, but by any means. But it felt like Dyche wanted to get him into the team because he's sort of his good luck charm, isn't he? We still haven't won a game under Dyche without Doucouré being in the 11. So, but I think Doucouré does sort of epitomise the change, doesn't he? Because you look at us now in the last few games, and defensively, like it's genuinely impressive, I think, to play Arsenal and Chelsea back to back and concede as few chances as we have to them and concede few goals. Because I was watching Arsenal against Palace on Saturday night, and the attacking talent they've got and the way they move the ball and the way they cut Palace open time after time. You're thinking to keep them down to what we did last week was really impressive. And the same with Chelsea. I've watched them at times this season, and the fluidity in their attack, and obviously Palmer dropping off into little spaces and being a playmaker, and they look almost impossible to contain. And by and large, in the second half, we did that yesterday, and that's all good. And you can put that aside and say, super impressive the way in which we managed to shut those teams down. But the context is that we've lost. You lose a lot, I think, by playing Doucouré, or this version of Doucouré as the 10 now, because I mean, you go back to last season, and certainly Dyche's first time at the club and the early part of last season, and Doucouré was such a linchpin because he could do what he's doing now, which is hold the shape, be physical, press well, drop back into midfield, into a 5 when needed. But he would chip in with a goal every 3 or 4 games as well in a big game. But that side of his game seems to have gone now since his latest injury. He's not really getting on the end of things. He's not being a force in the opposition box. Like attacking wise, his game seems to have dwindled a little bit. He's still offering a lot to the team, I think, with the other bits and pieces he does, but he's not that 1 in 3, 1 in 4 goal scorer that made him so important in the past. And I think that's kind of where the team is. Like, we'll go back to the Chelsea game last season. They have loads of the ball. They pin us back a little bit. We have the odd chance, and one drops to the core, doesn't it? And he scores, and we go 1-0 up, and then Dobbin obviously clinches it late on. I think that's the difference at the moment. We haven't quite got that player who will chip in frequently, and that's why we're seeing these 0-0s as opposed to maybe nicking a game 1-0 here or there.
Yeah, I also think it just places too much emphasis on Illiman and Dye to produce a moment. I mean, the last couple of games, Everton haven't even had Dwight McNeil's set-piece delivery or crossing ability to rely on. And I think it's fair to say that neither Harrison nor Lindstrom on the other side has made the position their own at all. I mean, I do wonder if there's a version of this moving forward where Dyche wants to retain Decore as the 10, wants to keep and Dye on the left because he's better on the left than the right. And McNeil maybe comes in but plays from the right, but is more of a playmaker from that role on the right with a defensively solid right back. Maybe that's the way forward in all of this. I still think it's the big tactical question for Dyche. It's how does he find that balance from the number 10 role? And I think the solution proposed over the summer was Illiman and Dye. Obviously, a lot of defensive work rate. Last time I checked, he'd made the most recoveries of any player in the league. And I thought he put in a fantastic defensive shift again against Chelsea. But Dyche doesn't want to use him there. So it becomes about Decore again. And yes, it gives Everton more defensive solidity. But if you're going to kick this on, you're going to need more in the games where you have 60% of the ball yourselves, where, I mean, Brentford come to town and there's no idea really, even against 10 men, how to break them down beyond just cross, set pieces. And that's still where Everton are under Dyche. So he's almost happier in this situation, isn't he? Because his hand is forced. He needs to accept Everton's inferiority in terms of ability. Almost just retreats, allows the opposition the ball, which is fine for him, and creates a defensively solid foundation more often than not, looks for anything in attack. The big question is still what happens in those other games when Everton are expected to win, when they have more of the ball, when Decore as a number 10 isn't going to cut it. And I'd like to see a bit more flexibility there. I would like to see, for example, if when a Southampton or an Ipswich comes to Everton, I would like to see Ndiaye as a 10 or something a bit different. I don't think it has to be Decore every single game in that role. Tactics are there for a reason. You can change.
I think the only thing with that is just like you're leaning more than into a style of football which I don't think the manager is comfortable or very good at coaching. It's one of those where like this right now is what he knows, and I think that's why Everton, when they do decide we're going to just stop teams from scoring, totally sacrifice almost all of our attacking instincts, but we're going to stop you from scoring. They're quite good at it because I feel like that's what Dyche is quite good at. But
it's a very good quality to have as well, Matt.
Yeah.
It's earned Everton points that we didn't expect them to get in this spell. Let's be honest. I actually started to wonder whether they had these performances in them this season under this manager, because I'd seen Tottenham, the 4-0. I'd seen the 4-0 at Man United. And I think that Man United one in particular was so worrying. Looks like a one-off now, in effect, doesn't it? In the context of the other games around it. But there was such a lack of defensive solidity there that I was thinking, do they have it anymore? Does this manager have it anymore? I mean, to be able to do this means that they are going to pick up points that others around them just won't. And I think ultimately, you look at that core of Pickford, Branthwaite, Tarkowski with Idrissa Gueye in front. That's really quite solid, and that gives you a chance. You end up nicking some games that maybe you shouldn't do. The problem is that they're maybe not nicking as many because they're squandering those chances like Harrison did.
Yeah, I think Les always speaks about this really well. He always says Dyche will turn losses into draws. And like you hear about top managers being able to turn draws into wins, don't you? And like how that can take a team from being a European team into a team that challenges, about changing those draws into wins. Dyche does losses into draws. And like it's not as dramatic, and you could get caught because it's only a point a game here and there you're accumulating, but it's Yeah,
Does
it's.
he
Go on,
does he
sorry.
turn losses into draws, but wins into draws?
That would imply that we've been winning games, though. I reckon, and like you
Oh,
were
but like
winning, and then
they should have
lose.
won that Brentford game, shouldn't they?
Yeah, but like I never felt like we were winning. So if you get what I mean, like when we literally weren't winning, but like it never felt like a game we were gonna win. If you get what I mean. So, but yeah, maybe just turns everything into draws. Maybe that's like Dyche's natural,
It is.
aura. Just
It is.
in,
And
in
I think he's
everyday
quite
life,
happy with that.
just brings everything back to being 0-0. Like even like
He's
around the
quite happy
house.
with that. But I
Yeah,
was really interested that in the press conference after the game, Enzo Maresca said he was happy with the draw as well.
yeah.
He was
They
he
must
was
hate.
really
They must hate playing at Goodison Chelsea.
he was really quite pleased. I think there's a bit of trauma attached to being a Chelsea fan and coming to Goodison because they've got such a bad record in recent seasons here.
Yeah,
He said he was quite happy. He said these are really tough ground and bad record here and so defensively solid and stuff like that. Very hard to score against. So he seemed quite pleased that they'd almost come away with a point. I mean, it was Everton. I think on the balance of chances in the second half, Everton had better chances than Chelsea. First half, Chelsea clearly, but second half, Everton were probably the ones maybe not pushing as such, but with the better opportunities. Interesting to hear that. I think it wasn't what I expected, but he did say it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good point in the end, certainly. And yeah, it's weird going into Boxing Day City away thinking I'll be disappointed we don't get something there now, which is mad. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Off the pitch, obviously big day as well. Yesterday, Paddy brings on to our second point. The Friedkin Group had the representative there, Mr. Mark Watts. He was
4 of them.
How many were there? 4?
4 representatives from the Friedkin Group.
There we go.
Brian Walker as
anyway.
well. Brian Walker, who's vice president of strategy of the group, another from the US, I think a former Marine actually, but been working in their strategy department for some time and quite highly regarded. And then a couple from their London office as well, because of course they have got headquarters. Friedkin International has headquarters in London. So 4 of them in attendance sat. I think they were kind of Kevin Thelwell was there in the director's box, and Colin Chong and Sue Gregory from Everton in the community. So somebody pointed out, I tweeted that yesterday, and somebody pointed out on Twitter, it's like nice to have a board at the game, which was fair enough.
I mean, it's been a pretty eventful handover for them, hasn't it? By any means. I mean, obviously, it's in these circumstances, I imagine it's always quite busy and a lot to do. But getting the deal done, obviously on Thursday, we did our podcast on Thursday night, and then 24 hours later, they were stood at Bramley Moor, weren't they, with the keys to the house, effectively. And it's and then obviously Sunday we had the game. So we're about 4 days into the Friedkin era now. I know you've done a big piece on this, sort of wrapping in the match into it all yesterday as well.
Yeah.
What have you made of the very, very early stages of their tenure? It all seems to kind of have followed the pattern that we sort of predicted, in the sense that we'd have the big announcement, there'd be a lot of excitement, a lot of relief, and then just cracking on with business and trying to get things done in as professional manner as possible.
Yeah, I think we said, didn't we? We didn't expect much fanfare, and there hasn't been much fanfare really, not from the Friedkins themselves or the group. I think timeline-wise, this is quite interesting in the sense that, like you say, more or less 24 hours after completing the takeover or confirmation of the takeover coming through for fans, they're at this shiny new stadium on the waterfront, with Everton now having taken the keys, now officially taken over the site from the constructors, Lango Rourke. And I think that they will see that stadium, and they have seen that stadium, as a huge opportunity to push Everton on commercially. A lot of the early talk has been of making Everton more financially solid right now, clearing away the debt, some of the stuff that we've spoken about previously, and then refinancing that debt on long-term low interest rates. But B, more or less investing sustainably as well. Like if you grow Everton's revenues, then you can obviously do it in a way that makes sense with PSR. And that immediate, there's no reason why that can't see Everton's revenues just rise exponentially. Increased gate receipts, new commercial deals. They're still interested in stadium naming rights, I believe. So that's going to be a key pillar of this strand, and why Everton, once they got through some of the early issues, became increasingly attractive to new investors like the Friedkin Group. It's been busy for them, hasn't it? I mean, at the game on Sunday with the Everton scarves in the director's box, and met Sean Dyche and the players on Friday. Separate meetings with them. Again, I think that idea that the club is now on a stable footing financially was emphasised. Also, as Dyche pointed out in his press conference to us on Friday, the idea that he and Kevin Thelwell would be given a bit of time to show what they can do, both out of contract, but to show what they can do. Stress this is about results, of course. If Sean Dyche is going to stay on, then I think he knows and has said this himself. He has to win a lot of football matches. So an audition of sorts for some of those guys. And then I think the other good stuff is meeting, as Dave Kelly put out from the fan advisory board, meeting representatives from key supporter groups, showing a desire to engage there, meeting staff at the Liver building, meeting staff at Finch Farm. I think in those meetings, kind of explaining a little bit about the group and their plans for Everton, and then taking questions. And what's come through in all of it, I think, is that there's a feeling that there's mistakes that's been made at Roma, but that they've learned and that they know that there needs to be kind of a pretty measured approach here. I think that it's not going to be music to anyone's ears in the sense that it's going to immediately herald a big spending spree or whatever else, and Everton are going to catapult up the league. But it is the right thing, really, to me. It is the way that this has to be, particularly with some of the PSR constraints. I think you just need to build the club again. I mean, it's just been in such chronic need of investment, basically across the board. And I'm not just referring to the first team there, but I mean, at academy levels, with the women's team, in every area, infrastructurally at times, as we know. Having the opportunity to do that now, you can build those things up, then they're the kind of marginal gains that really help. So I'd say an impressive start. All the right things said, all the right things done so far. But ultimately, as we know, they're going to be judged on how consistent they are in following that project through, and whether, when push comes to shove, they still follow those messages. So yeah, kind of pretty optimistic. And I think just the fact that the club is now much more stable financially is a massive positive, massive win, isn't it?
Yeah, that's enormous. I think that was obviously the main thing from my point of view. But I also like the stuff you were saying there about, meeting staff at Finch Farm and the Liver buildings, because I imagine, working in any company, if there's change of ownership, sometimes it just feels like from the very top there's changes at that level, but it doesn't really ever filter down, and day to day it doesn't really feel much difference. But it feels like, to use the winds of change as a blowing through the football club, you want it to feel like everybody's getting a fresh start and everybody can be, given a chance, and we'll get that pep in the working life. So the fact that they've done that and they've looked at it on a granular level, I think is really important. So encouraging, certainly, that they've been looking at the football club from that point of view on every sense, and no stones were left unturned.
The other thing there, of course, Matt, is that while this is clearly a net positive for the club in the sense that it puts everything back on an even keel, it's quite inevitable when you have regime change. And this is in any job, in any walk of life. When you have regime change, you start to wonder about what those changes are going to amount to. And for example, whether there are going to be cost-cutting measures and things like that. I mean, very recent example we have, not too far away from here in Manchester with United. That's really not positive at all in terms of what they've done to the club so far, Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos. So people are right to be a bit hesitant, a bit reticent when it comes to what this actually is and what it may be. And I think that's why it's important that you're fielding questions and that you explain and that this is about, yeah, of course, it's got to be a business and we've got to make money and all that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, doing it in the right way. So again, if they follow through on those words and the actions show that as well, and that is a big positive. It's inevitable that people might, particularly those in situ in jobs, might wonder about what's coming next. And so far, the message has been reassuring.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel very reassured by it all so far. But like you said, it's very early days, and there's a long way to go. The last 10 minutes, Paddy, we're going to rattle through some questions. We've got absolutely loads, so quick answers to these. Very,
funny, but I'll try.
we've had a couple saying this. We've had one from James Priestley and one from Jack Darden saying, "Any news on the takeover? All seems to have gone a bit quiet."
I just see that and I just breathe a huge sigh of relief and just like, oh God, I'm so glad that we don't have to answer questions on that day in day out. I saw your response saying that there's a group 777 interested in it.
Apparently they're really good. Great CEO as well. Yeah, baseball caps and suits. You wear, so he's got the look down.
What a ride we've been on.
Right, let's wrap. We've had loads about January. So we've had one from Jason. We've had one from Snowy. We've had one from Grant as well. Basically, I'll read Grant's out, but they're all very much along the same line. Focus on January. We've likely limited funds, loans being the order of the day. What positions need focus to get us to the summer, in your opinion? Who do we see going out? So I suppose two parts of the question we've had. Funds-wise, are we expecting much or not? No, shaking your head already.
No, and again, I don't think that's about a lack of funding. But going back to what we were saying earlier about PSR, I mean, I think that they are inheriting those parameters, those very tight parameters, and they're tied and bound by what Everton have done so far, which is those heavy losses over an extended period of time and revenues not being what they or anybody else necessarily would want. So I think there will be some money available in January to strengthen, but I don't think it'll be loads. I think again, it'll be about having to be smart and sensible in what they're doing. I'd expect more money again over the summer for a bigger revamp of the playing squad and staff. And then I think once we get into next season and the revenues that the new stadium brings, that's a new PSR era for Everton. The game more or less completely changes because they have much higher revenue. So I wouldn't expect loads. To answer the second part of that, if it is in my opinion, I think they need another attacking option behind the striker. I'd like to see Royer get a run up top. I think there with Chimiti coming back and Calvert-Lewin, that seems all right for now. I wouldn't invest in another striker. For me, I'd be looking at a pacey option, probably on the right. I think they need more goals in that attack. I think they need a bit more creativity in those attacking midfield spots. And I still look a full-back and think they look weak there, both in the short term and much longer term with Young and Coleman's contracts expiring. Left back looks like another one for me. And then
certainly I think January, yeah,
certainly for January, and then for the summer, I think you're then also looking at central midfield too potentially, because Decore and Gay both have their contracts expiring. Irabunam started well, but you could see he was a work in progress. So there's a lot to do here. I think over the summer we'll be looking at most positions because you have to, given how many players are out of contract. But I think there needs to be something in Dye and let's say in Dye, Decore, McNeil, decent options in a variety of different ways. But I think they need something that's going to trouble teams a bit in behind. Bit more pace, bit more power, a bit more goal threat. So they would be mine, Matt. What about you?
Yeah, I think a wide player definitely, and a left back. Certainly, just looking at January, I think you can muddle through to the end of the season with a combination of Young, Coleman, Patterson, Garner, whoever else at right back. I think we've got options there, but I think left back we are short. I mean, Mikolenko's done well in the last 2 games, but going forward, he offers so little. It's those games like Brentford, isn't it? We've mentioned already, where you need that bit extra going forward. So yeah, a wide player and a left back for maybe the priorities in January. But a few about the manager. This one I think is interesting. Tangled Up in Blue said, the manager who saved us from relegation 2 seasons running would, in almost any other circumstance, be automatically a club legend. Yet here we are. Why do so many fans have such a dislike for Dyche? For me, Paddy, is it just that like we just get fed up with people quite quickly? Like I know he's quite an abrasive personality, and obviously the style of football is a thing as well. But I just think in modern football, unless you're doing amazingly well and like there's clear progress or you're winning stuff, I feel like fans of every football club in the end, after about 2 or 3 years, just get a little bit fed up with everyone, and you need to just freshen it up a little bit. So I mean, taking the football and the results out of it, maybe it's just kind of a bit of a product of the modern football environment too.
Yeah, and I think that social media as well. I think sometimes there's a bit of a restlessness that comes in, something new, something different. More access to see what Bournemouth are doing away at Old Trafford and what Brighton are doing down on the south coast and all that kind of stuff. So I think in general, not just Everton fans, but me, other football fans, everybody else, I think we do tend to get bored of things a bit quicker. Attention spans maybe aren't what they were as well. Everton specific stuff and Dyche specific stuff. I remember saying on this pod and on another one I did for The Athletic that Dyche is and never was going to be loved. His football, his personality. And I think if you're going to be an Everton legend or a legend anywhere else, then it's not just about success. It's also about being adored by the public, the supporter base. I mean, like I grew up on stories of Joe Royle and Dave Hickson from my granddad, for example, and Graham Sharp and Peter Reid, all these figures. But there was such fondness when I was told those stories, and such fondness for those people and who they were and what they'd done for Everton. And that's because of the connection that was made. And I don't think Dyche has made the connection in the same way, which is part of it. I also think because of the style of play, again, it's never going to be loved, is it? What I think history will look back favourably on is the role he did, particularly last season, in those incredibly difficult circumstances, in just keeping Everton up and keeping Everton up relatively comfortably, all things considered. I think that was a key moment in the club's history, and he did help them get through it. So I think we'll, in time, when he's gone and something new comes in and something shiny, hopefully, I think we will be able to look back and go, actually, I didn't love that era, and at times it was a slog, but he helped us get to where we are now. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just hard to live through it, isn't it? Like it's one of those where in the moment, while we're going through it now. Like I mean, playing well at the moment, but you don't want to watch highlights of defensive masterclasses, do you? You
it's not fun, is it?
No, it's not. It's not fun. I mean, you'd rather like the last 2 games be drawn 3-3 in both of them or something like that, I suppose. But alas, that is not the Dyche way. And we'll finish off with this one, Paddy. We've had loads of questions this, so we're not able to get to all of them. Try to round them up as much as possible. But this one from Andy S. He said, what do you think the biggest sliding doors moment of Mashiri's ownership, besides perhaps keeping Kenwright as chairman? I wonder about the consequences of appointing Moyes rather than Ancelotti. I get that one. I think weirdly it's probably, is it war in Ukraine starting? Yeah. That changed everything, really, didn't it?
100%. 100%. That's the moment when the whole game changed at Everton, because Mashiri's access to cash dried up more or less instantly. Everton's access to those sponsorship deals from Usmanov's Russia-based companies dried up more or less instantly too. And more or less from that point, you can chart the steady decline of the club financially. I mean, the stadium had to be financed in a different way, left them scrambling for financing there. The Managerial wasn't able to put money into fund losses. They had to take on pretty high interest bearing loans and extra debt, creating a financial situation for people to deal with, which also affected PSR, of course. And the playing squad then in that period, basically from there on in, playing squad basically hasn't been invested in. I mean, look at the players they've had to sell basically just to keep or try to keep things going. And I think that is number one, and I don't even think it's close to anything else. The second one, because of the implications in a whole load of different ways, is Ancelotti leaving and Benitez coming in. Because we all know how that story ended. And I think that what it did inside the club, I remember speaking to Alan Kelly for an article on the Athletic, interviewed Alan Kelly, the former goalkeeping coach. He said to me, like, that was almost at the moment like hope evaporated at Everton. Very, very different era. Instead of looking up, starting to look over your shoulder, looking down. And I think that changed a lot as well. So they're the two big ones, but I think the Russia invasion of Ukraine is number one by some distance.
Just very quickly before we wrap up, like on Ancelotti, I've always thought this, but I don't think I've ever asked you this actually in person. I don't even know the answer. Was there a clause in his contract or something that meant he could just go? Because it felt like it all happened very quickly to the point where I don't know if Everton got paid by Real Madrid. I think did he have a year or two left on his contract? But like the way it just seemed to all happen very, very fast, almost as if like Real Madrid activated some clause in his contract and he went. But and like I know he would have obviously wanted to go, but I just remember the time being very struck by, because it was sort of reported, wasn't it, in Madrid on the morning of it, and then it was by the afternoon even. I think it was done.
He didn't. I don't know the specifics of the contractual situation. In fairness, I'd have to go back to what we reported at the time because it's a decent while ago and a lot's happened since then. But what I do know is, what I can remember is that there was certainly a sense that Everton had basically, once he'd informed them of his desire to leave, they did not stand in his way. And it was almost like, right, okay, we'll facilitate this. The big mistake for me is maybe not necessarily letting Carlo go. It's in what follows and how that transition is handled and the appointment that's made after that, because it didn't have to be Benitez and there were other options. So it is a sliding doors moment. I think it's a big sliding doors moment in terms of like the culture at the club and what it did to people internally and the friction it created. Like, if you think about how many people left as a result of Benitez's tenure, you had like the director of football, head of recruitment, head of scouting operations, for starters. He had Danny Donachie, the head of medical leave, medical department ripped out and effectively started again. It was
James, Luca Dean.
Just well. the fallout from it was huge, wasn't it? So crazy times, and sometimes you just look at this, go, only Everton.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. Wild times indeed. We'll wrap it up there anyway. Thanks to everyone for listening. If you watch us on YouTube, so mind to leave us a comment. Hit like, hit subscribe if you're listening to us. Yeah, leave us a rating and a review. And yeah, that's it. Everton Byline 21, last one before Christmas. Just want to pass on from me and Paddy our best wishes to everyone over the festive period. Really enjoyed doing this show and really appreciate the feedback we get throughout the course of the year. It's been very, very kind. So thanks to everyone for listening. Happy Christmas. Hopefully we can have a celebration on Boxing Day as well. But yeah, me and Paddy will be back next week to go through that and the Forest game. But yeah, up the toffees. We'll catch you again soon.